Today, we have Sergey Chubarov, who is an infrastructure team lead at Microsoft SI partner. And Sergey has over 10 years experience on Microsoft technologies. He's a Microsoft Most Valued Professional, MVP, and has several different certifications for Microsoft Azure, Certified Ethical Hacker, Certified Ethical Infrastructure, and so forth. So very happy to have you on board, Sergey, and please go. You can start.
All right. So thanks, Anna, for introduction. You can look at my picture again and some certifications. What this is all about, what this webinar is all about. We're going to talk about Azure and the web applications in Azure. And we will touch some of the technologies that may help you to protect your applications when you host them in Azure. Of course, this webinar will not give you the whole picture, because to talk about security in Azure, I can do it for ages, I can do it for days and weeks, and we have just 1 hour. But I will give you some techniques and some technologies that may help you to protect more your applications. Once again, you will not have the complete picture. You will not secure your web applications from all the sites, but you will make them more secure after this session. So once again, my name is Sergey, and I'll be your host for the next hour. I prefer not to do any slides. I don't like to show you slides. Usually I use slides to just introduce myself. And then I will jump to demo. So this session will be full of demos. And if it's possible, we'll have some interactions, if it's possible. So please be with me and do what I ask you to do, because we'll have some fun with our web applications. All right. And by the way, I just get back from the United States, where I spoke on Tech Mentor conference in Redmond. So it's Microsoft HQ, of course, Redmond. And I spoke about ethical hacking, and this session was really successful. So looks like I'm quite smart. All right, so let's jump to demo. And let me just show you that I have web applications in Azure. And let me show you some attacks that may be performed on these web applications. So let me just jump to zoom out. So this web app is developed by my fellow. This web app is about cars, and that's a main page for these web applications. So I can go to some cars here, see details. If I go to leaderboard, I can see the leaderboard here. So I can sort results. Let me go back. What is interesting, this app may be vulnerable. The problem is of web applications, that web applications developed by developers, of course. And our developers, they may not know all the security practice, good practice, or they may not have time to secure their applications. If somebody of you here is a developer, you know what I mean. Or if you're not a developer, or for instance, you may be network engineer or security engineer or something like, or system engineer, you know that we have to configure app to make it work first, and only after that we'll be thinking about security. For instance, if you have a task from your boss to deploy some service, you're thinking about to make this service work. And only after that, you're thinking that it has to work secure. The same for developers. They have to have app that works. And only after that, they start to think about security. That may be a problem for us when we host our application somewhere in Azure or anywhere else. Application itself may be vulnerable. So maybe operating system like Linux or Windows is not vulnerable, but or SQL or Apache that we use for hosting maybe not vulnerable, but the application itself. that developed by developers, our developers or some third-party developers, may have some vulnerabilities. Now let me show you how it may look like. So I have here control called cylinder layout, and if I click V16 or any of the cylinders, I can see that I have my cars that have V16 cylinders. That's fine. Let me go back. If I click V6, I have another car. I go back and I click V12, I have other cars. So it looks like this page make a request to SQL database, or maybe no SQL, who knows, and take some data, but it's SQL database, and takes some data from this database. And here's the, let me open up my notepad. And here's the, oh, sorry, let me just zoom it in. It's too small. And here's the URL that I use to get a request and get this data. But what? Let's think about what if we can take some other information from the database. Let me just try to play with the URL. Let me try to type V6, and I have another car. So if I manipulate with this URL, then I have different result. It means that when I'm doing some stuff with this URL, I have different request to database. But what if this request may be vulnerable to SQL injection? Let me explain what SQL injection is. When you make a request, then your web application make a request to SQL database. It may be MS SQL or MySQL or any other SQL, Oracle or something else. And it makes a request to SQL database, and then database gives you SQL request back, SQL response back, and then this request shows you on this response showed you on the web page. But what if developers not filter what data I send to my database? And what if I send not just this value, let me just show you here, not just this value, but send something else. Let me try to show you. If I do something like or 1 equals 1, and I have all the data from this table because of the SQL injection. This means that what I did generally, this request looked like that. So select maybe star from some table, I don't know the name, maybe cars, where cylinders equals V12. What I did, I close this expression and type or 1 equals 1 and get rid of the last one quote. And this means if you try to do this request in your SQL Management Studio, you'll get all the data, because this is called tautology. So it means that 1 equals 1 always true, and it retrieves the result, that all the results, because all results are true. So you have all the data from this table because of the SQL injection. But if you use some automated tools, like, let me show you one of those. I think I have it somewhere here. Yeah, it's here, called Havich. These tools may be used just by script kiddies. And if I take my URL and just try to analyze this up with special application called Havich or SQL Map. SQL Map is much better, but SQL Map doesn't have a GUI, so I want to show you with GUI. So I can see the target is vulnerable here, and if I go to tables, I can see I have a table. Let's try get tables. Oh, I can see that I have tables here. Let's try user profile. Get columns. Oh, password. That's nice. Let's try password. Get data. And I have some passwords of users, quite typical passwords. I hope you get an idea. So with SQL injection, I can have an access to not only to my web application, but to my database. And if this database has some access to operating system, then from database, I can move on. I can move further. For instance, maybe in database, I can find the login and password, and with login and password, I can just move on to infrastructure. So that's quite dangerous. Of course, developers may not do these mistakes, but if we are not developers, we're just security practitioners or system engineers, we may not know if they have problems in their code or not. So we have to have a way to protect our apps without code reading. So that's one of the vulnerabilities called SQL injection. And it's quite possible, even if you host this application in Azure, it's still maybe a target for SQL injection. So that's one of the vulnerabilities. Let me show you the another one. And here to show you this vulnerability, I want to ask you to help me. Let me ask you to go to this web application. Sorry, I wanna send to everybody. Or do you have my link? Hopefully you have. If not, please go to this web application. This one. This web application. So don't worry, you will be safe. That's fine. No worry. So please go to this web application, and then from this web application, jump to McLaren, View McLaren's. And here from View McLaren's, just click View on P1. Just do only that, nothing more. Just go to McLaren, go to P1, and just click View P1. What is interesting that this app has some JavaScripts, and this JavaScript wasn't created by developers. That was created by an attacker. And if I go to one of my attack framework called BIF, okay, so and I can see lots of connected people here from Firefox, from Chrome. It looks like it's mine. From Linux. So I can see 4 people and me as well who are connected from to my app. And what can I do with them? Let me click to Firefox, to somebody from Firefox. Don't worry, I'm not gonna attack you. And I can see information about your operating system, and it looks like it's Finnish language, and something about your browser. So hard GPU vendor, Google Incorporated. All right, so what can I do here? I can go to commands and I can try to play with your PC. For instance, if I go to social engineering and go to let's try Google Vision. Let's go pretty shift. Let me send you the LinkedIn request and click execute. And it has to show you on your screen that you sign out from LinkedIn and ask you to sign in again. Let me just show you on my screen. Go to commands, social engineering, pretty shift, LinkedIn, execute. Let me go here and session timeout. Please sign into LinkedIn again because you forgot your, but you need to type your username and password. Let me do. Oh, by the way, maybe you type your username and password. Don't you mind to do that? Of course, you shouldn't do. You shouldn't type your username, correct username and password. Just type something. Just to I want to see that you. Okay, lol omg. Get it. Thanks. So that's called cross-site scripting, and it wasn't developed. Just refresh the page. It wasn't developed by developers. It's not. So that was added by me. I know that's you can see my name here, and that's Cyrillic, and probably you cannot understand it. It's in Russian. It means that everything is cool. It's rocks, cool, and stuff like that. But to be honest, if I go to my view source, to view source, god damn it, let me try to find me. Where is it? Oh, as you can see here, it's script. It's script that launch my JavaScript on this address, and it hooks your browser, and so I can have some control over your browser. And it was created by attacker, not by developer, not because the developer is cruel and has some malicious scripts, but by attacker. Because your developer, not your developer, I mean my developer, doesn't filter what can be input in this field when you post a command. I cannot post a command here because I need to log in first, but when I log in, I can post commands. And as you can see here, this command may be quite dangerous. So that's another attack called cross-site scripting, or XSS. I don't know if you want, I can send some requests to other folks, but I hope you believe me. Let me just send it to other guys. Let me send Google phishing, and you have to see Gmail page. Let me send to Linux some stuff like commands. Oh, it may be funny to send to Linux Windows timeout. Let me just choose Windows timeout. I think that's enough. So that's called cross-site scripting. And with cross-site scripting, I hook your browser, and then I can do some stuff with your browser. Nowadays, browsers are quite stable, so they cannot be exploited directly. I cannot just send some malicious stuff to your browser directly, but I can use social engineering and send something like LinkedIn session timeout, Facebook, Windows, and so on. So they're still vulnerable. Users are still vulnerable to social engineering. All right, so that's that. You saw two attacks. Of course, we have much more attacks than two of them, but because we have a short session, then we'll see only two of them. You saw two attacks. One of them is SQL or SQLi or SQL injection, and the second one is XSS, cross-site scripting. We have much more attacks. Let me just show you. LFI, for instance. LFI means that when I can browse, open files on the local machine, I mean on a remote machine, the server, via web application. So in web application, I can browse files on the web server. That's quite dangerous, and so on. And we have lots of them, lots of attacks on web applications. And the question is what to do with them, how to be protected. Of course, first of all, is use secure development, secure dev, and use best practices. And generally speaking, the modern software for development, they give some suggestions how to create these controls more secure. So if developers use some modern development tools, usually development tools give some suggestions how to make it better. But still, big problem of development that we don't have much time for security. We need to do it urgently. And maybe some of you are developers, I'm not sure, but if you're not a developer, you cannot be sure that the application is not vulnerable. You have to have some ways to protect your apps without code reading. And this way called Web Application Firewall, that you may find in Azure. First of all, let me just go to Security Center, Azure Security Center, and just show you that our SQL injection has to be detected. It has to be detected. Hopefully it was detected. Where is it? Threat protection, security alerts. Let's see. Potential SQL injection. As you can see here today, we did a couple of SQL injections and it was detected. So first of all, we can detect. Of course, if you detect SQL injection, you may start to do some investigation, and maybe you can just stop this attack before attackers filtered some data. But we should not only detect, but also we should prevent. And to prevent it, we have special tool, special service called Web Application Firewall, or WAF. WAF. So Web Application Firewall, that's a service in Azure that you can easily deploy. And when you configure Web Application Firewall, then you just enable firewall status. I set prevention, so I want firewall to prevent this type of attacks. And in firewall, I have some rules that built in. And if I see these rules from AWASP, OWASP, that's an organization that closely work with web application and web application security and give lots of recommendations. So Microsoft use their rules. And if I click Enable Advanced Rule Configuration, I can see what rules I have here. And I have them here, a lot. So from LFI, RFI, remote code execution, from PHP attacks, cross-site scripting, SQL injection, a number of rules. If I expand them, you can see the bunch of rules. And one of the rules is SQL tautology detected. Tautology means that it was my attack, tautology. So 1 equals 1, it's tautology. So probably I can have protection from this type of attacks. So first I have to deploy Web Application Firewall, and then, and then I need to configure my backend pool, and my backend pool will be my app. And I need to configure my front end, and the front end will be my public IP. And of course, I can configure my DNS to resolve this IP address. All right, let's try. Let's try to do the same with firewall. So I have the same app, but as you can see here, address a bit different. I publish this address in my personal domain in NRU zone. you may not go there. Some people don't trust to Russian domains. Anyway, so if I try to do the same, so let me go to my cylinders, and try to do the same attack. So the attack was, let me show you a notepad. The attack was like that. Or 1 equals 1 and get rid of the last quote. Let's try. And access denied. So this web application firewall detects this type of attacks and prevents this attack from being executed. So in this case, I may be protected from this type of attacks. From cross-site scripting, of course, let me go back. If attack, let me go here. Where's my McLaren? McLaren's P1. If attack is already performed, then application firewall will not help you here. But when I try to input my script as a command, then it will block me. So in this case, my web application firewall will not help me because I already saved the script, and the script is like a part of this application. I mean, I already paused this command with the script. But if this application already protected with web application firewall, then when I try to upload my script, when I try to post my command, it will block me, and in the same manner. So that's web application firewall. Quite interesting service. If you have some apps in Azure, web apps in Azure, think about web application firewall, because yeah, you have to pay for that. That's true. But if you have security problems, it may cost you much more than the cost of this service. So please think about this web application firewall, or just test it. Test it for a period of time. It won't be so expensive. And Azure have a native from Microsoft Web Application Firewall, and also has third parties like Barracuda. They more recommended, but for the beginning, you may start from just native Web Application Firewall in Azure. All right, so that's about Web Application Firewall. But what also I want to show you that the big problem of any cloud service like Azure or Amazon, if you have good protection for your apps, but somebody got access to your portal, I mean Azure portal or AWS portal or so on, then you're in trouble. Then this attacker may do everything he wants and disable any protection. For instance, if somebody got my username and password to Azure portal, so attacker just can go here, disable any protection, get any data he wants, so he has a key from the kingdom. That's one of the big problem of the cloud services that we have. We may have really good protection, physical protection and so on, but if our accounts that have access to the portal are not secure well, then attackers can just get access to our account and we're in trouble. So the big part of the protection is not only to protect your app, but to protect your access to the portal. And to do that, we have a couple of controls. Let me jump to where is it? I think here. Yeah, let me jump here. And general control to protect our accounts is MFA, multi-factor authentication, MFA. That's really good. I always recommend to use MFA, but to be honest, for many people, it may be annoying to use MFA always when they connect to their email account or when they go to the portal and so on. That's annoying, MFA. But it's so on one hand, we should use MFA, but on the one hand, it's really annoying and users don't like it. And we have to solve this puzzle. make it secure, but at the same time to make it work better for our user. And here, a couple of services that can help us to make it more convenient. First service to make it more convenient, called conditional access. Come on, work for me, please. Okay, so let me go to conditional access. Conditional access. Conditional access means that you configure your access and some requirements based on conditions. Because when you configure your MFA or access denied or allowed, it's based on the usernames, for instance. But in conditional access, you can configure you have much more conditions to configure your access or MFA requirements and so on. Let me get rid of that. So conditional access, that's access based on conditions, of course. And I have a number of conditions here and policies. Let me just first show you how to create policy and what configurations I have, and then I will show you some policy that I already have. So let me click New Policy. Policy name, I don't care, to be honest. Users and groups. So I want this policy for all users, or for some users, or for roles, or for everybody except. For instance, I can have it for all users, and I can exclude some groups or some directory roles, like let's try to exclude SharePoint administrators. It's not a really good idea, to be honest. Guest inviter, for instance. Let's exclude guest inviter, but for all other users, this policy will work. I can play with that in different ways. So I can do it for all users, for particular users, for directory roles, and the same I can exclude. Then I go to Cloud Apps. Let's click down here. Go to Cloud Apps and say for which Cloud Apps I want to configure my policy. I can say for all apps or for selected apps. And if I click the selected apps, I have to see a list of apps. Yeah, I have them a lot here. So for particular apps, and I can search for others. I have much more apps. So more results can be shown. Just use filter in a search box. And the same I can exclude, or I can do for user actions, but it's preview, so not yet. Cloud apps. Let me just say for all apps. Let's try some particular app. For instance, let's try Dynamic CRM Online, just for instance. And the most interesting, conditions. With conditions, I can configure in which conditions will have to be applied for this policy. Sign-in risk, let me skip it for now. I will talk about that a bit later. So device platform, let's see that. Device platform, where is that? Show me. So I can configure, for instance, any device, or from device platform from Android, or from iOS, macOS, Windows, and so on. Or the same I can exclude. Get rid of that. Locations. That's really interesting about locations. So you can configure from which location you have this policy work. That's what really interesting. I had one customer who wants to work with all of his cloud services only from his corporate IP addresses. So they had quite restricted policies. They wanted to use cloud, but connect to the cloud only from corporate IPs. So users cannot work from home. That's not really a good idea for the cloud service, but anyway, that was their wish. So users can work only from office. And so you can configure your policy, for instance, to block access and exclude some particular locations like corporate IP addresses. I had this policy once, I mean this request once, but it's possible. If you wish if your policy to work from particular addresses or exclude some particular addresses, it's possible. Okay, let me get rid of that. Also, client apps. Will be applied to the browser or maybe some desktop apps or mobile apps. You can configure that. For instance, you may configure to connect to your Outlook account, your email account from browser or from app. That's possible. So this policy will be applied in these conditions. And the last one, device state. Device state. Device state means that it's only for exclusion. And here you can exclude devices that compliant or that in Azure AD, I mean hybrid Azure AD. It means that Azure Hybrid ID means that your device is added to your local ID and synchronized to Azure. All right, that's our conditions. And then after you configure your conditions, you go to grant and decide to block access or grant access, but require something else like multi-factor authentication. So you configure your policy. Of course, you have to follow the logic. You have to decide first before you start to configure your policy. Will you block access or grant access? And depends on this configuration, you should configure your conditions, of course. And in this case, you will have your access or you will not have your access. Let me show you some examples. So the first example, exchange online access, means that our user, when user try to access to Exchange Online, it has to ask him MFA. Let's see that. Let me sign in with user account. All right, has to work. It is. It worked. Take Azure for free. I don't want. So as you can see here, it didn't ask me for MFA. But if I go to my mailbox for the same account, outlook.office.com, the same account asks me for MFA. Let me just approve it really quickly. So because I have a policy for this user, if this user connects to the mailbox from browser, it asks for MFA. But if I go anywhere else, it will not ask me for MFA. All right, so let's try something else. Let's go to office.com or portal.office.com, portal.office.com. Office.com, the same. Here I have SharePoint. Let's go to SharePoint. Looks like it works. hopefully. Yeah, it works. So I connect to SharePoint, but I also have a policy. Where is that? Not here. Here, block from Android that blocks my user connection from Android device. Let me try to go to SharePoint, but from Android device. Let me jump to my Android device and go to SharePoint. This device quite slow, so please be patient. Come on. Be patient for me, not for you. Come on. Android. Work. It has to. Oh, finally. So let me try to log in with this same user account of M. Smith. Let me just try to type password really quickly. And it has to show me that I cannot connect here because of the policy. Yep, you can access this right now. So I can block this time I block access. So last time I allowed access but require for MFA, but this time I block access for SharePoint from Android device. But I can go to SharePoint from my Windows device. And the last one, let me just show you really quickly. I can do some configurations. It's a bit out of scope. It's not about Azure portal, but let me just show you. It's really interesting. I can also control the user behavior inside of this service. Not all services support it, but some of them can give you this possibility. You can configure to prevent downloads from your service. It's really convenient. For instance, you may block downloads from SharePoint or from your webmail. Some of my customers use that for their contractors, not to download emails from the mailbox, just work with emails inside of the mailbox. Don't download attachment. I mean, prevent downloads of attachments. Let me show you my Power BI, and I configure to prevent downloads of reports from Power BI. Hopefully it will start to work. Let me try to go to my reports. My reports, and I have a report called income. Income. A bit slower, and I don't know what's going on with the Power BI. So show me that. This report is about, just create it really quickly. This report is about income by capita in the United States. So the darkest states are the most rich. People are most rich there, like somewhere here, Washington, Connecticut, probably Virginia, New Jersey. That's weird. New York, Washington, California. Who cares? Anyway, I need this report. By the way, Alaska is quite affordable. So let me go to File and download this report. And ready for download, but no way. Download blocked. Download income blocked by your organization security policy. And if I click open here, I can only see this text document, not more. All right, so that's about how can I configure access to my portal based on conditions. You can configure access to your different services, to your Azure portal, to your other apps like email account, and so on. But of course, we're talking about web applications, and so in this case, probably it will be Azure portal. Or maybe you have some admin center for your web application. For instance, maybe you have your application on Joomla, and you may configure to prevent access to Joomla without MFA or from some locations or so on. You may do it. For instance, maybe you wish to give access to your CMS only to your developers from your corporate IP addresses and so on. It's possible. So you can do it with conditional access. And the last service before I jump to questions, do you remember when I show you conditional access? Let's create new policy once again. Where is it? When I configure conditional access, I had sign-in risks. Sign-in risks. So here we go. And I mentioned that I will talk about a bit later. So let's talk about sign-in risk. I think you have an idea what does it mean sign-in risk. For instance, when you try to sign into your Google account, the Gmail account, for Facebook account, many public services from different locations. For instance, you go to the business trip to another country, or you go to a vacation and decided to work with your mailbox, and you have a message from the Gmail, for instance, that's the first time when you connect from this place. Let's try to verify your identity and so on. So we have something similar for Azure, but more advanced. Let me jump to this service, show you really quickly. Here. I think I should click just the dashboard because I have lots of these windows open. So this service called Azure AD Identity Protection, and this service analyzes many factors and calculates risks based on user actions and user number of events. So if I go to user reflector for risk, and I can see Michael Smith is the most risky user, of course, because I have lots of demos for this user. The second risky user is me. I travel a lot. That's why I have some risk events. But for this time, for this summertime, I prefer to stay home. So that's why I have only 2 events, but usually I have more than 10 because I connect from different locations. And I also have risk events. And usually it's risk events like signing from anonymous IP addresses or signing from unfamiliar locations, signing from affected devices, or we may have much more risks. For instance, one of the most advanced and most dangerous risk is when user, let me just show you. I think you know this service. Have I been pwned? I think you know it. So have I been pwned? That's a service that has a huge database of leaked credentials. And it's really dangerous when your user, when the credentials of your user are leaked and you don't know about that. I just checked one of the email addresses, not mine, of course, and I can see that many leakage sources for this email address with username and password. So that's public resource. You can play with that if you don't know. What Microsoft can do, Microsoft monitors your Azure AD accounts, and if they find one of those accounts somewhere in a public network with username and password, they will raise this event. I don't have any leaked account, so I don't have this event, but you can just read the description about this service, and you will find that they have also this type of events. linked credentials. So I have a number of events, and then I create a policy. I can create a policy based on the user risk policy. User risk means that if user have some risk where is it? Risk level. So if user has the risk level, then you may ask him for MFA or block access for this user, for instance, for highly risk level users. Or you can configure sign-in risk policy. Sign-in risk means that you can configure some actions during sign-in. I have policy. Oh no, you cannot configure MFA for highly risk user. You can configure password reset for them. So I have a policy when M Smith, once again, I'm Michael Smith, tries to sign in with risk medium and above, require MFA. So let's try to simulate medium risk. Let me go to where is it? Oh, you already saw that if I go to portal.office.com, works fine. I have to be M Smith. I am Michael Smith. But let me try to do the same, but from the browser called Tor. Why Tor is risky? Because usually normal users, they don't use Tor. Usually some attackers, hackers, and so on, they try to use Tor to hide themselves, hide their identity, hide their location. So usually Tor isn't used by normal users. Usually attackers use Tor. Let me try to simulate the same, but from Tor browser. Tor is quite slow. Sorry about that. I will do the last demo, and then I will jump to chat box and ask if you have any questions. By the way, if you have any questions, you can start to type them for the sake of time, but be with me because it's the last demo. Let me type password, and let's see. And here we go. So that was suspicious because, you know, that's a Tor, and I have to verify my identity. All right, so that was the last demo. We discussed first how to protect your web applications in the first half, but it's not enough just to protect web application. You have to protect your admin access to the portal, because if some attackers can just log into the portal, then they can disable any protection, they can get access to any service. So please, not only protect your web apps, but also protect your admin access to the portal. That's really, 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 really important. All right, so hope it was informative for you. That's the last slide for this presentation. That's a couple of words about me. Once again, here's my contacts. You can drop me an email, but usually after I do some demos, and by the way, you haven't seen my demo when I bypass Gmail protection and drop a malicious email to the mailbox. After that demo, nobody wants to send me emails. So that's why I give my email address and also LinkedIn. So you can just scan this QR code with your LinkedIn app and you'll find me really quickly. All right, so that was about hacking and protecting web apps. Of course, that's just a short webinar. I can talk about that for days because we have number of attacks and number of ways to protect. And you have also protect your database. And if you have virtual machines, you should protect virtual machines and so on. But if you implement this recommendation that I show you here, you will increase your security. You will make your web applications more secure.